Welcome everyone to another edition of Pep Talks. This is Pep Talks number 5 with my dear friend and fellow co-author, Lee Pace. How are you, Lee?
I'm all right, Dave. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. When I was typing up, when I get to set up my Zoom meetings or my YouTube meetings, I always put the date, Pep Talks, the person, and then what they are. So they're either an artist, a children's author, a footballer. I was trying to put for Lee Pace, I was putting educational consultant, coach, mentor. First and foremost, what are you?
Yeah, you can be lots of fancy titles, Dave, but I'm a teacher.
Right.
I'm a teacher. And as a teacher, one of my most important roles is to learn as well. That's what I do. I'm a teacher.
And you're a deputy head teacher. How did we first meet, Lee?
18 years ago at Huntington Primary School. From memory, we met in a corridor and you were pointing out a lovely shrub, which was in the quad at the time. And I just thought, what on earth is he talking about? I can't tell what I was really thinking.
At that time, you were in your early 20s and you thought, who is this silly old man? And you're in your early 40s. Shrubs are something you enjoy very much, isn't it?
Enjoy would be at a stretch. I think 3 years ago, Dave, if you remember, I needed some shrubs and I found you.
So, Lee, I'm going to talk today about pedagogy. And obviously, because, you and I have co-written a book. It's time for a shameless plug. Optimal Learning, a practical guide for teachers. It's available, I'll put the link underneath it, but it's available at pepthepoet.co.uk/shop. And it's on there with my other little book of children's poems, Peter Pants. So if you want to treat your loved ones, get them one of those. Like I say, Lee, I've known you for a long time and we've all spoken about pedagogy. But if somebody asked you, if you're at a bus stop and somebody says, what is pedagogy? Now, I'll give you the dictionary definition of pedagogy. And the dictionary definition is pedagogy, a method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or a theoretical concept. To you, what is pedagogy?
When people ask me, a lot of people ask me this, I always start with what it isn't. And I think that's important. I mean, just on that dictionary definition, what the bit that I liked is the theoretical concept, because it's really difficult to describe what it is. For me, it's the central role of a teacher. But what I would say, what it isn't the PowerPoint that the teacher shows or presents. What it is the thinking behind it. It's not the question the teacher asks, it's the reason they ask it. And it's not the outcome the teacher chooses, it's why that outcome is purposeful. It's the thought behind the practice between what you might call an expert and a novice, or in my field, a teacher and a pupil, whoever that pupil might be.
So it's about the teaching, it's about the learning, it's about the relationships, it's about the questions. It's all rolled into one.
Yeah. My issue, because if I can get on my high horse, Dave, that's okay, because that's what I do with pedagogy. The issue I found in education, and I use the term loosely because it isn't all schools, it's not all colleges, is we've dumbed down teaching. We've not used the word pedagogy enough. We've given non-negotiables. Teachers are bright people. They've been to college and been to university for 6 years after a GCSE. They arrive fresh, new ideas, very bright people. And then we as leaders sometimes try and tell them how to do their job. We give them a set of non-negotiables. We tell them how to mark. We tell them how to plan. We don't ask them how it might be better. We don't coach them, we tell them. And that gets in the way of any pedagogy.
Do we tell them, or are we just frightened and we're following government directives?
You always say, Dave, fear tells lies. And yeah, we do follow government directives, but it's in our interpretation. There's no government directives on pedagogy. There's no preferred teaching and learning style promoted by OFSTED. They make that really clear, and you can go on the internet and look at the myths around OFSTED. But there's unintended consequences. And I think in my head how it works is a head teacher or a deputy head teacher or a set of governors they'll read an outstanding OFSTED to see what happens in one school, and they'll follow exactly what happened in that school, thinking that's what OFSTED want to see. And when we do that, we miss the point.
So Lee, a few days ago, I sent you a list of questions, and obviously they're in order. And like any teacher, pedagogy was number one. But I'm going to jump straight to question 8 because you've mentioned it. So I'm just going to ask you this one. Do Ofsted get an unfair press?
Yes, I think they do. I think they do. I mean, we were at a meeting with Ofsted years ago, Dave, and
Michael Claddenbowl, wasn't it?
Michael Claddenbowl, and he talked lots about unintended consequences of Ofsted. I think the framework's always been punitive. It's not a caring framework. It's not a developmental framework. They are there to judge us. And when I'm arguing, whether it's in a meeting with somebody or just in the staff room, I always say their job is to judge us, not write our policies. And I think what schools do is allow Ofsted to almost by proxy write their policies. That's the difficulty. You know, that's where the system's unfair, but to say Ofsted have created that would be wrong.
I always think with Ofsted, the one thing that used to really annoy me was when somebody wants to get their own agenda in, they always tag Ofsted onto, oh, Ofsted said this, well, I've heard Ofsted said that. And you've always said that, Dave, Ofsted, they've got a site which they update straight away. Get on the Ofsted site, look at the latest guidelines. And most of these teachers that are full of fear, half of them haven't read any Ofsted documents for 3 or 4 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it almost demystify. If you know what they're after, you wouldn't be so scared.
No, and I think the other thing to that, Dave, about this is around leadership now. And when I'm coaching, if I'm trying to introduce a new idea, my rule is don't mention Ofsted. Strong leadership, no. Strong leaders know why they're doing something. They've got their argument of why they want to influence somebody's practice there or influence somebody's policies. If you're using Ofsted as leverage, I think that, perhaps it's too strong to say that's weak leadership, but it certainly isn't strong leadership when you say, we need to do this because Ofsted say we have to do it. Ofsted don't say that, it's a myth. Stop doing it.
Well, that leads me on to another question that I've just invented in the last few seconds.
Thanks, David.
So is Ofsted a good thing?
In the right context and then having the right process, yeah, to be judged. And we used to have this debate, Dave, and I always said, if somebody comes to your house, a painter and decorator, you're going to look at their work.
Of course you are.
You're going to judge their work, but at the same time, they might make a little mistake.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're going to put them in special measures for their next job. But
people will argue, if a painter did come to my house and made a mistake, I wouldn't write a report on it, put it online, and people in Brazil they'd know he was rubbish or she was rubbish. I think that's the difference. It's taking it out into the public forum that scares people.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. We've got 1,000 days, and you've got 1,000 or 600 days in school, and you build a child's life chances around a 2-day inspection. That can't make sense.
Which could change at any moment. And like we said, some of the work that you and I have done with Wolverhampton University and a lot of the training we've done together, that in our 20 years of teaching, almost, there's been like 15 Secretary of States for Education. And I think we worked out, it's roughly one every 1.6 years, or whatever. And we said that if you're a 22-year-old teacher and you're just getting into the profession and you're going to work for 40 years, you'll have 28 Secretary of States for Education. So your job is going to radically change every 18 months. And with that, the Ofsted process as well. So listen, we'll leave it on Ofsted and we'll move on to something else, mate. Right, Lee, next question. And I'm going back for a short time to your first answer. And you said that first and foremost, I'm a teacher, but you also said I'm a learner. And I know, was it in ancient Greece or way back when, apparently the word for learning and teaching was the same word and it was sort of interchangeable. What would you say were your 3 top tips for learning?
First one's easy. Find inspiration. And I mean people. People will change who you are and what you become. And I want to give you an example. People will laugh at me because they know how much I love this guy. And it's Professor Brian Cox. In 2011, he produced a series of films. He always calls them films. And I just love the fact he calls them films. And he did a series of films called The Wonders of the Universe. And one of the films is called The Arrow of Time. And in 4 minutes, he managed to describe how the universe will end. I'm trying to talk like him. And he talked about the last embers of the universe. And he said it so poetically, it was beautifully put. And I can feel it now. I can feel it now. I've got goosebumps on my arms and butterflies in my stomach, and I'll tingle down my back. And at that moment when he was explaining that, he was talking about the massive amount of maths and time involved, and he said he would stop. And how I was feeling then, I thought, that's how I want my pupils to feel in my classroom. That is what I want for them.
Now, for our viewers out there, we were fortunate enough to go and see Brian Cox, so Professor Brian Cox, in concert or a one-man show. But between the two of us, we had very different experiences that evening, didn't we? So,
well, I was awestruck, David.
Yeah.
In many, many different ways.
Yeah.
And you went to sleep.
I fell asleep. I do actually. I think Brian Cox is absolutely fantastic. And like you said, mate, the way he explains such complicated things and makes it bite-sized and tangible. But I think that night he's just, he's in another league. So I just couldn't get it. But what a brain. So inspiration is number one.
Yeah.
So Lee, our eagle-eyed viewers will know all about continuity. And the backdrop's changed because I was outside. It's beautiful weather outside. So I sat outside and it was gorgeous. The guy next door was mowing his garden, or the lady across the road, and then there was a dog barking. So obviously we've had to come inside. So that's why the background's changed. And
the second one definitely is to ask questions. Never stop asking questions, particularly why. I say this to NQTs. I mentor quite a few NQTs, and I don't want to be rude to their future senior leaders, but when they're asked to do something, ask why. Keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting. You have to mark in a particular way, ask why. I ask pupils to ask those questions of their own learning as well, even prompting them to do it. If you don't know why, if you're not asking questions, you're not developing that habit of curiosity. Without curiosity, for me, there's nothing. And, you know, we talk about, there's lots of talk about mental health, and I think we've read quite a lot around mental health and the link with curiosity and that wanting to learn about new things. It is when we stop wanting to learn. And you've got a lovely phrase actually, Dave, and I'm trying to remember it. You say, you know you're getting old when you regret to replace your dreams.
Correct.
And I think your dreams are driven by questions.
Yeah. And then as a 57-year-old teacher, deputy head teacher in a secure job, in a job that I love, and I've still got another 8 years of doing it. But I've always wanted, another shameless plug, my little book, Peter Pants. And I always wondered what it would like to be a travelling poet. But I thought I don't want to sit in an old folks home when I'm 85 and think, why didn't I do it? So at 57, I'm giving my job up to do that. So, yeah.
So I think that fits perfectly for me. You've been inspired by others, other authors, other poets.
Yeah.
And also you've asked the question, what if? What if I do this?
Yeah.
That's because you keep asking questions, Dave.
And I quote you on many, many occasions because people say, because it's an uncertain time, even before the lockdown, it was, well, what happens if you don't get any bookings? I said, what happens if I get loads? What happens if you don't sell any books? What happens if I sell thousands? Because that, as we said, that fear tells lies. That little voice in the back of your head will tell you, oh, this is not going to work. And that's your own words I quote back all the time. And what would your third idea be?
The third one is definitely a bit more teachery, I suppose.
Teachery?
Teachery.
Is that a new word? Teachery.
Yeah. Teachery. And probably it's much less philosophical than the first two. And I love, and this is a quote, again, inspiration, that I stole from Alistair Smith many, many years ago. And it's practice makes permanent. Don't strive for perfection. Practice makes permanent. You've got to keep practicing. Yeah. And I think that's evident in everybody's classroom practice. And pupils will always talk about they've got to practice their spellings, they've got to practice their times tables, but it makes it permanent.
It does, yeah.
And there's a lovely theory. I know a lot of sports people practice it. If you talk to a professional footballer, they will know when I talk about deliberate practice.
Yeah.
I forget the book that it was first cited in, but it means practice isn't always interesting, but it's always necessary. And that's a mindset that I want my pupils to have.
Right, Lee, that brings our little conversation to an end. Our interview is nearly over. Now, you and I have been having these conversations for 18 years. The only difference today is we've actually recorded it and we're going to put it into a public forum. I know in certain countries that to become the Secretary of State for Education, to be in the education department within the government, you have to have worked in education. So we've taken that on board. The Prime Minister's agreed with this. So tomorrow morning, you've got a call from the Prime Minister. And they've said, Lee Pace, as an educator, I want you to be the Education Secretary, and you accept it. Now, you're in a position, all the things you've talked about, pedagogy, that's going to be at the forefront of everybody's thinking. You're going to demystify OFSTED. You're going to take away the fear from OFSTED. It's going to be more sort of cooperative process. Young learners, you're going to inspire them to learn because you're going to get them to look for inspirational figures around them. You're going to get them to ask questions, and you're going to give them opportunities where they can practice the skills. So you've become the Secretary of State for Education. What are your initiatives? What are your quick fixes to get the ball rolling?
So the first one, I would stop calling them initiatives and stop having quick fixes.
Right. Okay.
We've had so many quick fixes, so many initiatives with National Numeracy Strategy, National Literacy Strategy, Grammar for Writing. Ofsted change their protocol, their processes every 2 years. We have a new Education Secretary every 18 months on average. So I'm only going to be here for 18 months anyway. But I want to embed things that last.
Okay.
That's really important. But also knowing it's not about me, because I won't be here for that long.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do, or the second thing I do, would be staff development. I would put everything into staff development, because if you put everything into staff development, the pupils get the very, very best out of the staff. I don't want teachers to be technicians. To me, pedagogy, teaching, learning is much more of an art. It's much more of a craft. At the moment, we've mechanized it. You know, we give them PowerPoints, schemes of work, non-negotiables. So they're constrained. And this constraint leads to de-skilling of them. And then we complain they're not creative enough. It just isn't fair. So they need, you know, a proper strategy to develop staff. That would be my second one.
Okay.
The third one very much links to the second one, and that would be around workload. I think there's two issues with workload. One is there's too much to do and not enough time. I think lots of teachers recognise that. And the second one is a lot of the stuff we do, we don't know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
I always pick out triple marking. Never done it. I've seen it, but I have no idea how it works, why it works, and nobody's ever proved it to me that it's necessary. We're just not given the time. I was at a school under a little bit of pressure in special measures, and I was talking to a local authority consultant, and she said to me, Lee, if you put a policy on Monday, I want it embedded on Tuesday. You know, I once had stopped laughing. I did, you know, I practiced what I preached and asked, how will that happen? And why is it useful?
Yeah.
You know, we're asked to do some ridiculous things. We really are. And I think you're the man of statistics on this, Dave, more than me, is where all the new teachers that start, say, in September, how many of them will be left in 5 years?
Yeah.
I don't think it's many. I don't think it's many.
Within the first year, you'll lose, is it 30% of them? We did a learning seminar at Wolverhampton University this year. We've done it, I think, 3 years on the trot. But we actually said that I think there was a couple of hundred young people in the auditorium, and we got a third of them to stand up. And we said that, I think we got 20% of them to stand up. I said, within the first year, you'll all leave. Then we got 35% them to stand up. I said, within the first 5 years, you'll leave. And it was quite daunting seeing them all there. So
it's a huge amount of waste as well. We put all that effort in to training teachers. They go through university. They do different paths now, but mine was PGCE. It's an awful lot of wasted effort, an awful lot of wasted talent.
Yeah. I like that bit of when you said about writing stuff that nobody will ever read. As you know, I'm a wee bit older than you, and I'm a great Beatles fan. And there's a line from the song Eleanor Rigby, and it says, Father Mackenzie writing the words of a sermon that no one will read. And so many times in my career, I've written sermons that no one will read. So it's tiring. So, and
sounds
again,
like a lesson plan, Dave. We've got to look after teachers.
Now, finally, this initiative is very dear to my heart because I've suffered from this and I still suffer from it. I'm winning today, and all I've got is today. But when we're talking about work-life balance and well-being and mental health, as you know, 2 years ago, I was off work for 10 weeks with anxiety and depression. The way I was treated by my head teacher, my fellow colleagues, my governors and the parents and the learners was second to none. I was told I was well loved. I had enough time to get over it, and I came back stronger. But what would you do to safeguard people's mental health and well-being?
It's having that framework in place, isn't it? The framework you had.
Yeah.
Staff development actually as well, to recognise those signs when somebody is struggling. Yeah. We take away the non-negotiables.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing better than being in charge of your own destiny. There's nothing better than autonomy.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than having a phone call home. You know, particularly in this lockdown now, I know when I talk to teachers, and I've surprised a few, it's a little phone call. Sometimes it's the smallest thing. Absolutely. I know I talk about strategy, but actually sometimes it's that little chat, looking out for each other. And like you, David, I'm in a school where I feel so lucky. And what you talked about your difficult 10 weeks, and I had a difficult few weeks before Christmas. Now my mum was ill, and fortunately she's better now. But the amount of staff that came up to me and said, Lee, you know, I am if I need you. And as a deputy head, you think, what a beautiful thing that they've come to me. And as a deputy head, I always think I've got to look after all the staff. Well, it's beautiful that somebody came to me and said, are you okay?
So Lee, that's us, mate. We've come to an end. And if you want to know a bit more about Lee and I, you can buy our wonderful book, Optimal Learning, A Practical Guide for Teachers, which is available at www.pepthepoet.co.uk/shop. Lee and I are also a duo called the Thought Weavers, and you can find us on Twitter. Lee, what's our address?
Weavers, @Thought_Weavers.
Right, and we have about 7,000 followers. So and all our ideas we put on there. So again, when I'm not doing this, my other thing that I'm, like I said before, as from September, I'm going to be Pep the Poet. So again, all my social media is @PepThePoet. So you can do that. And finally, at the end of this video, could you just have a look at the bottom of this YouTube clip? Could you just give me a subscribe or a like? Yeah, that would be great if you could. I'd really appreciate it. It'd take 2 seconds at the end just to press subscribe. So, Lee Pace from David Anderson.
I enjoyed it.
I love you very much, mate. And I cherish our friendship, mate. We've been friends for a long time, and I even came on honeymoon with you. That's how much I love you.
And I surprised you on your 50th birthday as well.
Yeah, surprised on my 50th birthday. I was the man that I met your wife that day, and I rang you up and said, Lee, I've just met your future wife, and you'd never met her. So we've had a lot of fun, mate, and we've got loads and loads to come. So until the next time, my friend, I love you very much, and keep doing what you're doing because you've been a huge inspiration to me, mate. So take care. God bless you, my friend.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye-bye, mate.